Welcome back, everybody. So this is the first time we're going to be on YouTube Live. I hope the live streaming works. I have not tried this before. This will be the first time ever. Welcome to our stream. We've been streaming on Twitch so far on how to learn web development using ChatGPT. We've basically been using ChatGPT as our guide to look for online resources and to help us build a web application. So we're gonna continue on our tutorial. If you've been following the series, if you check out my channel, you're gonna see that I have a series of videos of us going through the React tutorial. We're on day 7 now. Day 6, we're so close to finishing up the tic-tac-toe tutorial. We just have one section left. I just want to take a quick second and check to see if the stream works. So please bear with me. But essentially, our web application is going to, we're trying to make a web application to help students develop their career interests and figure out what type of careers they like. I thought this would be a fun tool for us to make, and in order to make the tool, we need to learn all aspects of full stack development. And what better to learn full stack development than to use AI, like use ChatGPT, right? So that's kind of the whole idea of this series. The whole idea is basically to use ChatGPT as a tutorial, as a tutor. It can help us gather resources online, and we'll go through the tutorials together, and we'll try to build up this whole system, right? So I'm going to quickly check the channel, and I'm trying to build a whole community of a whole community that we can work together with. I actually created a Discord channel. I've been talking about this for a while now, but I have a Discord channel. I would love it if you guys could join the Discord channel over here. You can feel free to hop in, discuss with us. We can go through the process together and just build a community where we learn together and discover how to program together. Just some background in case you guys are new to the channel. I'm a firmware engineer. I work kind of in embedded systems, and I work with a lot of between software and hardware. I haven't done full stack development in a long time. I used to write some Ruby programs with Ruby on Rails, and I've used the Spring framework with Java, but I'm completely unfamiliar with JavaScript and React and Node.js, all those things. So this whole series is about learning Node.js, right? Learning React.js and building a whole brand new web application together. So yeah, let's get started. If you guys have been following along, again, if you missed out on the previous lessons, if you just go to my channel, you'll see all the videos we've been making so far on the live stream. Let's continue on with our tic-tac-toe tutorial. All right, so if you remember from last time, we actually completed the whole game. It's really cool to see the progress that we've made, because so far we're able to literally play the whole game, right, and detect a winner. And the tutorial didn't let us the tutorial didn't go over this part, but if we tie, we can even detect a tie now, right? So I think that's pretty cool. This is a part that we added on ourselves, and yeah, I think it's a lot of learning. To get to this point, we've learned about arrow functions, we've learned about props, we've learned about React hooks, the set state function. What else have we learned? We learned this ternary operator. We learned about components and how you can nest components. And I think the most important thing is we learned how to lift the state of a system. So when you have states inside components, the components can't talk to each other. So in order to let the components talk to each other, you lift the state, which means that you move the state handling variable up one level, right? Once you move it up a level, that level can control all of the subcomponents. All right. Before we go on, actually, I want to just quickly talk about the architecture of our web application again. So a couple lessons ago, or a couple days ago, we created this web architecture of our web application. I just want to go over where we are right now and if we're on track, right? So it seems like a lot of stuff to do, and I do agree that we have a lot to learn. Right now, we're still on the star. We're almost done with the star, I think, at least the beginning parts. I think once we start developing the application, our progress is going to speed up dramatically. Right now, we're just trying to go through the tutorials, learn the basics. The basics are super important to understand because when we run into issues, we really want to know how this whole system works together. We don't want to be guessing and trying to figure it out while our application is being built. And we also want to architect our application in the proper way. We don't want to start developing the app and then have to rewrite like half our code because we didn't understand something. So again, on the right side, we have our client side application. This client side exists on your client, right, on the device that's viewing the web application. And on the client side, we have to work with a couple frameworks. We have React.js, which handles the front end, D3.js, which will do our fancy like animations and graphics and stuff like that. We have yet to do D3.js tutorials. We have CSS and HTML, which we sort of been using in React.js already. We'll slowly pick up over time. On the server side, we still need to work on Node.js, right? So we did a small little quick start tutorial for Node.js. We literally set up Node.js, ran Node.js, and it we created a Create React app according to ChatGPT. We installed Create React app. When we ran it, it loaded up a Node.js instance, and then it kickstarted a React application on our client, and that's how we got to React. So we have a +1 here, meaning that we'll get to it, right? I think that's the next thing we'll get to. We still need to learn about database management, right? How do we store files? And also figure out how to use Express and authentication in case our application requires us to have users, right? So again, this is the whole map. I think a fun activity later on might be to take a picture of this map and feed it to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, hey, do you think that this architecture is good enough for our application? So we'll use that feature later on. There's a code interpreter in ChatGPT that we can use, and I think it should be able to understand images. Once we have the images, like once we separate the image and send it to ChatGPT, we can see how well it can interpret this stuff, right? So let's get started. Ask ChatGPT, hey, do you think that this architecture... I am on my own stream. Okay, so I'm gonna go check out the stream just to see if any of you guys are here. If you guys are watching, feel free to say hi in the chat. I'll monitor the chat and we can talk together, right? All right, continuing on. So where are we? We are at adding time travel. So now we're able to declare winners of the game. We're able to declare if it's a tie. We now are at the last step. So the last step, we want to be able to go back in time to previous moves in the game. All right, so how do we do this? Storing a history of moves. If you mutated the squares array, implementing time travel would be very difficult. Okay, so this is back to the immutable part that we've been focusing on. In React, because React only changes components where the state of the component has changed. If you modify objects, React needs to go through and check to see if your object has actually changed. The quickest and easiest way for React to know if something has changed is not actually to check, like deep check the object, right? Instead of deep checking the object, React can actually just check the reference of the object. If you check the reference of the object and the reference has changed, then it's very easy for React to know that, hey, I need to re-render this component. So to encourage that, what React says is, let's make all the components mostly immutable. And what immutable means is that component cannot be changed, right? In order to change it, you need to make a copy of it, make your own modifications to the new copy, and tell React, hey, this is the new copy. Use the new copy instead of the old copy. And that way React knows, hey, for sure, you've changed this thing, right? Like, that's why you gave me a new reference. So if we do that, there are a lot of benefits, right? One of the benefits, according to the tutorial, is that you can keep track of the history of the game, because every point where we've changed the game board, we've saved that state. It's an immutable state. It says, however, if you use slice to create a new copy of squares after every move and treat it as immutable. Oh, so however, we use slice to create a new copy of squares array after every move and treated it as immutable. This will allow you to store every past version of the squares array and navigate between the turns that have already happened. All right, so what this is saying is, hey, we use slice, which creates a copy of our game board, and then we treated it as immutable, and then now we can store every version of the past array, so we can navigate back to that particular version, right? You'll store the past arrays in another array called history, which you'll store as a new state variable. The history array represents all board states from the first to last move and has a shape like this. Okay, cool. So you can see before the first move, it's one array of all nulls. After the first move, somebody added an X to the middle of the board, right? Because each index of the array is the position of the board. And after the second move, somebody added an O to like the bottom right of the board, right? Because these correspond to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so how do we do that? Apparently, we need to lift the state up again. So we're gonna write a new top level component called game to display a list of past moves. That's where you will place the history state that contains the entire game history. By placing the history state into the game component, will let you remove the square state from its child board component. Just like you lifted state up from the square component into the board component, you will now lift it up from the board into the top level game component. This gives the game component full control over the board's data and let it instruct the board to render previous turns from history. Okay, so first we'll add the game component with an export default and have it render the board component and some markup. Okay, so let's look over the code, figure out what it's trying to do, and then try to duplicate ourselves, right? Instead of just copying and pasting. So what this is doing is it made a new board component. So we have our board component. It made a new component called the game component. And then we say, hey, this is a game. This is a game board. Here's our board component. And here's some game information. All right. Note that we are removing the export default keyword before the function board declaration and adding them before the function game declaration. This tells your index.js file to use the game component as the top level component instead of your board component. The additional divs returned by the game component are making room for the game information you'll add to the board later. Okay. Add some state to the game component to track which player is next and the history of moves. Okay. So is next, that's what we had before, and then the history. Notice how the array of array 9 fill null is an array with a single item, which itself is an array of 9 nulls. Okay, to render the squares for your current move, you'll want to read the last squares array from history. You don't need useState for this. You already have enough information to calculate it during rendering. useState for this, you have enough. So this says to render the squares for the current move, you'll want to read the last squares array from history. Okay, from history. You don't need useState for this. You have enough to calculate it during rendering. Okay. So how does this work? It's saying to render the squares for the current move, we want to read the last squares from history. Okay, that's fair. Oh, I see. So basically it's saying that we have the whole history, so we're just going to use the last history. Okay. Okay, that's fair. This is basically saying, give us the history, the end of the history list. I mean, the length of the history list minus 1. So why do we minus 1 here? Because lists are 0 indexed, which means that it starts with 0, and the length of an array is always 1 longer than the last index of the array, right? So for a list of 5 elements, it counts from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So the last element's 4, it's 5 minus 1, which is 4. So in order to get the last element, you need to take the full length and subtract by 1. That'll give you the last index. Next, we'll create a handle play inside the game that will be called by the board component to update the game. Pass X's next current squares handle play as props to the board component. Okay, so we're passing all this stuff to the board component. All right, so let's take a look. Let's take a look at what we have. So what do we have? We have the same thing, right? We have this board component. This used to be the top level component, export default function, board. So let's just start small, right? How do we start small? So let's look for this board component. Where does it end? It ends over here. So let's create a new function, right? This function, remember, to create a React component, we make it a function. We'll call this function game. All right, that's simple enough. So now we have a new React component. So what this tutorial is saying is, why don't we remove this guy, right? When we remove it, there's no top level function, top level component right now, because index.js is looking for that export default function. So we're gonna move it to game. So now, bam, game is exporting nothing. Let's return some paragraph tag with hello, just to make sure it works, right? Cool. Okay, so what we've done is we've moved the top level component to game. So if we wanted to, I'm pretty sure we can just give it board and it would work exactly the same as before. There. Okay, so what we've done is literally just made another component that returns board. Okay, cool. And then let's see what the tutorial says. We want to, okay, so we want to make it a little bit fancier. We want to have a game section. We want to have a game board section and a game information section. So this is a little fancier than before. That's fine. We could do that. So I think in the CSS, let's take a look. In the CSS, we have a class called board or game, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so it does have a class called game. So let's do that. So we're gonna export, or we're gonna return. Okay, so remember, components can only return one component, right? Or one like object. So we can't go like this, right? We can't do a second div and then return a board, right? This will break. Right? It's not happy. It says we must only have one JSX fragment. So we're gonna wrap this board in a div. Okay, so now it's happy again, and we're gonna name this div game, right? Cool. Is that what the class name is called? Game, all right. And then we want to split into two other divs. I apologize for my typing. I think the keyboard is in a funny spot today. Okay, so now we have two more divs. We're gonna stick the game board in the first div. Okay, so what's the point of these two divs? The first div is for the class game board, I think. Let's go back to the CSS. Okay, so game, is there game board? Game info, board row. Okay, so there is no game board. Let's take a look at what the tutorial says. Tutorial says game board. All right, I don't know where they're getting this class from. Let's do a search. Find game board. No results. Okay, whatever. There is no results for it. But I guess you can just name it. There's no CSS for it, but it'll display the board. And then the bottom, the class will be called game info. So this does have some CSS class in it. So let's just say hello world. Okay, so all right, that's interesting. You can see what happened, right? The CSS essentially the CSS, how do I do this? The CSS was able to make this div standalone and then clear the div so that all the text will be to the right of it, right? So let's take a look. I think we learned this the first time. Remember we learned what, oh, okay. So this game class ID creates a flexbox. So we haven't learned about flexboxes. I also don't know much about flexboxes, but I know it's a very powerful tool for CSS, and it allows us to use a type of formatting to control where elements of the screen go. And so this says use a flexbox. We'll learn about that later. And it creates a row, and then game info is on the right side, I guess. And it gives a margin of 20. So, okay, we'll gloss over the CSS for now. Let's go on to the lifting state part. Where's the tutorial? Okay, so we've done this, right? And this is like a list, right? So it's saying we have a list of to-do stuff. Okay, so ours is very, very similar. Let's just make it a list as they requested. So let's make this OL. And hello world will be part of the list. Why don't we do that? Okay, cool. Now, it says in here, we're gonna keep track of the X's next state and the history state. Let's take a look at our code. So what do we have in the board component? In the board component, we have X's next, right? So X's next is here. We're gonna lift this up to the next state. So let's grab this, remove it, and stick it in our new component, the parent component. Now, it's complaining because we removed one of its beloved children, X is next, but don't fret. We are going to put X is next as a prop. So now this is a prop, and set X is next is not defined as well. All right, we'll see how to do that. So we've made that a prop. Okay, so this is saying let's move it up one state. We'll do a history, and then we'll say current squares is this. And then we're gonna pass it in as a prop. Okay. Handle click I. Now replace set squares and set X's next with handle click. I see. I see. So I think according to the tutorial, what they're doing is they're gonna move this guy up a state as well. Let's take a look. Handle play. Handle click. play next squares. Okay, let's follow along with the tutorial. So handle play is here. All right, so current square, let's make the history state. I like this tutorial because it kind of makes it a little bit more advanced, right? This is a step up on the previous state, lifting the state from the last day, because the last day when we lifted the state, it was much simpler operation. Now it's a little bit more complicated. So let's find, okay, so in the game component, we're gonna make a history, and we can do set history. So as you can see right now, I'm still learning, right? We're all learning together. Like I told you, this is new to me, and this is why I'm doing this, so we can learn together. And I kind of want to show you how the learning process is like. When you're learning, it's very common that you're pushing the bounds of your knowledge, right? You know that there's stuff that you know, right? And there's stuff you don't know. And right now we're sitting kind of on the border of the stuff that we know and the stuff that we don't know. And I think it's very easy, especially even for me, to want to give up when you're on that border, right? Everybody likes to stick to the things they know. And once you start getting to the things you don't know, it becomes a little bit hard to push through that barrier. Your brain starts to get a little bit warm. It's a little bit tough, right? So what we need to know is we just take our time, right? We always refer back to what we know to develop new knowledge, right? So what do we know in this case? We know that we know about hooks, right? We've learned about hooks, and they're pretty easy to use, right? So hook is a state, which is the history state, and then set history, which is the setter of the state. And then we need to set the state, right? So we know inside the brackets are the initial conditions, and the initial conditions, we want a single array, right? Because it's an array of states, and the first state is an array of 9, right? And then we want to fill it with nulls, right? So this part we can do, right? We've done something similar before. This basically creates an initial condition with history of nothing, right? Okay, so now it's saying, hey, we also need to provide the current square, right? Like the not next square, but the current squares. And is that what they call it? Right, current squares. So what current squares is, we also know that. And for all tough problems, we just break it down. So to break it down, what do we need? We need to know what to render right now. Like what does the user need to see? And in order to show what the user needs to see, we can call it current squares. And then what the tutorial is saying is, hey, we have history already. This is history, which is the whole list of states, the whole list of the history. And then how do you find the latest one? Well, if we're adding it sequentially, we're adding it sequentially appending to the end of the array, then it will be history.length, right? That's how you get the size of the history. And then subtract by 1 because that is the last index. Okay, so we can do that. And then current squares is going to be, it's never going to change, right? Or it is going to change. So I think we need to do let. See if we're right. Okay, so current squares never changes because I guess we're making it immutable every time. So let's make this into a const. Okay, so this is current squares. Now, what do we need to do? Create a handle play function inside the game component that will be called by the board component to update the game. Okay, so the board needs to call. Okay, so that's how closures work, right? So we're gonna make a closure for handle play to pass on to the board component, right? I think that's what you call this. So basically, you make a function inside the parent class, and the parent class after you make that function and you make a closure for it, it'll contain the whole context for that function, and then you can take that function and pass it on to its children, right, along with the variables. So that's what is happening here, I think, which makes sense. So this is handle play. So on play, handle play. Okay, so the game needs to know when we played the game, and every time you play the game is a click, right? Okay, so all right, I think I can understand this. The board is gonna need to tell the game, right? The board is the board. The game is like the whole thing surrounding the board. Actually, let's take my iPad. Okay, so how do we understand this, right? We have a game here. We have the game, and then we have our board inside the game, right? This is like a component inside the game is our board. So basically what we're doing is we have a function called handle play. And I'm sorry if you guys can't hear me, my microphone is over here. So we have a function called handle play. This handle play will do whatever you give it, right? Like whatever this thing is, it'll function. But board is the one that handles the click, right? Like the on click is in here, right? So how do we get this board to call handle play, right? That's the question. Like when we do on click, the board needs to call this handle play function. So how we do that is we'll pass this handle play function. His functions are first class functions in JavaScript. You can pass this function without the operator. So you just pass this function as a prop to board, right? So this will take handle play. And then in the on-click operator, we'll call handle play, right? And then when we call handle play, the board can use the arrow function to do handle play, and then give it the squares, right? Squares. And then this is the closure. This will keep the context of handle play with the squares, and then wait until game receives it, and then the game will call it, right? So it's kind of messy, but I think we can implement it now. Which view? This view. Okay, so let's try it ourselves. So we're gonna make a function called handle play. And this will take the current squares. Okay, so what do we want to do inside handle play? We want to handle the play, but first, what are we gonna do? Okay, so this is the next squares. All right, that's fine. That makes sense. And then we're gonna pass on handle squares to handle play to the board as a prop. All right, so let's pass on all these props. Okay, so we need to pass is next, right? We want to pass on the current squares, and we want to pass on handle play, or I guess in the tutorial it's called on play. Okay, so what are we doing? So we got this handle play. It's gonna perform some function on the next squares. Oh, I see. Interesting. Okay, I think I see it now. So next squares is basically the next set of squares. So what do we do inside handle play? Inside handle play, I think we're gonna have to update the history with next squares, right? Well, that's just my guess. Let's just stick it in, because I think what's tripping me up is we don't know what's in handle play right now. So handle play, we're gonna take the history. We're gonna do history.append. How do you add to a list in JavaScript? Let's ask ChatGPT. We could look on Google, but we have ChatGPT. So how do we add to a list in JavaScript? Append to a list. All right, cool. So ChatGPT says use the push method. Cool, easy. You know, in the news, I heard that Stack Overflow has dropped significantly in traffic. I can totally see why. Like I said before, ChatGPT is definitely not a professor. It's not an official source of information. But what ChatGPT can be is a tool for us to have a suggestion, right? You can treat it like a friend that kind of doesn't really. I mean, it knows a lot, but also makes mistakes, right? That friend is like, it's like that friend that's a know-it-all, but sometimes this spews out like information that's just totally invalid, right? So for things like this, where if it's a method and it seems to make sense, like push, we can try it out, right? This method, if we took it for granted, like if we took what ChatGPT said, like verbatim, then it's no big deal, right? Because we can just try it. If it works, cool. If it doesn't, oh my gosh, ChatGPT was wrong, big deal, right? But if it was something like a learning concept, right? If you're trying to ask ChatGPT to teach you, I don't know, like calculus, and then it's giving you some hallucinated version of calculus, then your understanding of calculus may be totally off kilter and like completely wrong. So you want to take that with a grain of salt. And that's also why we've been asking ChatGPT to give us references to tutorials instead of giving us the tutorial, right? Like whoever wrote this tic-tac-toe tutorial is probably a professional that works for React or is like a volunteer that works for React, and it's probably reviewed by other people. It's been vouched by other engineers that use this documentation, and we know that this is like the way to use React. It's sanctioned by React. ChatGPT is literally just generated by its learning algorithm. So again, if you're learning with ChatGPT, be aware that you could be learning junk. Just make sure you get the right resources to learn with, right? So let's go back. So we're gonna push current squares into history. Okay, so that makes sense. Handle play, we want to push the current squares into history. How are we gonna get current squares? Well, current squares is gonna come from our board. So how does that work? Well, we're gonna pass in the prop. X is next. X is next. And then what is X is next? Well, X is next is X is next, right? Okay, so that's one prop. What about the next prop? Next prop is current squares, right? So we want to add current, oh, we already did that. So we want to add current squares to our board, and then we want to feed that as a prop. Okay, and then the last one is we want to pass on play. And on play, what are we gonna pass? We're gonna pass on the, I'm gonna check out YouTube, see if we have any visitors on our YouTube. Pass. Okay, I'm not sure if we have viewers right now, but please prove me wrong by saying hi in the chat, right? If you're a viewer, please say hi in the chat, because this is all new to me. I have no idea how the streaming thing on YouTube works. But if you're here and you want to talk to me, please ping me, go to the Discord, chat with me, join the server and be like, hey, you're missing me. I'm here. Don't ignore me. All right. Okay, so on play, we're gonna do handle play right here. Okay, so we've passed on everything that board needs to know, essentially. So what does board need to know? Well, board needs to, where is board? All right, board needs to know, is X is next current squares? So current squares is gonna be our square, right? Yes. How are we gonna replace this? So current squares is gonna be, can we cheat and put it here? No, we can't. Can we? Oh, we can actually. What if we just replace current squares here? We don't really need the state machine. What if we replace the squares here? Okay. So we need to refactor this up top. Okay, so what are we doing? Right here, use state. This keeps track of the square state machine inside of the board for the current move. So we're gonna update that as current squares for this. And then X is next. Since X is next is kept track in the previous state, I think we're gonna have to call it in here, right, on handle play. And then we're just gonna do handle play here. So on play. Gonna call on play here. I don't know if this is how it works, but we'll see. Oh, yes. Oh, I see. All right, so actually squares. Okay, so we probably need to say squares is equal to, so we don't need set squares. Set squares is gonna be kept track of by the game. So this will be squares equal to current squares. Okay, just so we don't have to type so much. And then when we do set squares, we're gonna pass on next squares to on play. We probably are destroying our code, but I don't know. I don't know how else to do this. I'm still learning, man. All right, so how do we do this? So on play, so when you handle click, okay, perhaps like this. Does it work? Nope, does not work. We cannot slice squares, which is fair, because what is squares? Squares is our current squares, and we can't slice it because why? Oh, current squares dot I thought current squares is, where is current squares? Sorry, I'm thinking a little bit. Where is game? Current squares is a, right, so current squares is a single array, right? That's what we grabbed. Right? So we should be able to slice it because, all right, so let's just undo that a little bit. Okay, so at this point, we kind of tried ourselves to update this. Let's see how React tells us to, because I'm a little bit stuck. So, okay, so we passed on everything as props. We're gonna say, let's make the board component fully controlled by the props it receives. Change the board component to take 3 props. That's what we did. Next, remove the first 2 lines of the board function that calls useState. Okay. Okay, so we can replace use. Okay, so we don't need. Okay, so they were telling us that we don't need these 2. We don't need squares and we don't need x's next. Okay. Now, what's the same? Saying that, okay, we want to add the props. So I've added the props incorrectly as well. The props need to be inside parentheses. Okay, a little better. Oh, so I wonder if what we did worked. It's just that we didn't put parentheses in. Okay, let's put the parentheses back in. So this one is, so this guy needs to move up to here. Okay, so we've done that. We're gonna remove set x's next because we've already done that. And then over here, we're just gonna call onPlay and then give it next squares. Right. And then I think squares is just current squares. I think we're gonna replace squares with current squares. I guess we can just define squares as current squares to make it quicker. But will this work? No. It does not. Oh, because we did not replace this guy. Oh, and it works. Okay. Okay, so we were right. We just didn't have the props correct. Interesting. All right, so okay, so what did we do here? All right, let's see if that's what the tutorial wants us to do before I start talking. So it says now replace set squares and set x's next calls in handle click in handle click in the board component with a single call to your new onPlay function, and then you give it next squares. All right, that's fair. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. My bad. One thing that we did, but we didn't have to do. Let's undo this work. So you see how I replace squares everywhere? So back it up. So let's not call this current square. Let's just call this squares to keep it consistent. And then this is a much easier refactor. All right. So squares is still squares. Great. And then x is next. Like we said, we moved it up to the previous state, like the parent state. And then over here, set squares, we want to call onPlay and then just give it next squares. All right, this makes sense. And then onPlay will update the next squares because squares is kept track of outside of this current state machine, right? It's kept track of in the parent state because we lifted the state. All right, much better. And then this guy is not happy. Why? Okay, I know why. Because we didn't in board we didn't pass down squares. Okay, there you go. Now everything's happy. Bam. There we go. All right. So it's telling us that yes, we want the 3 prop squares onPlay, and then we want to replace onPlay's next square. So what this is doing is it's calling this function from the game component. All right, let's take a look at our iPad a little bit. Let me make it a little more clear. So how this works is we have a game component. The game component, I have a game component. The game component has this thing called history, right? And a history is just a list of the states, right? Which each of these is a square. like squares. That's our squares array. And then we're saying, hey, current squares is this last one, right? This is current squares, right? The last array over here. And then what we're saying is now we also keep track of x is next in this outside game state, okay? And then the final thing is we have this thing called handle play, and handle play inside of this guy, we will update history and keep track of current squares, right? So now with our board component, what we had before was its own x is next, right? So we've moved this x is next up here. This is called lifting the state, right? We've lifted state. Try a different color. Can I do this and change the color? I can't. Okay, so we've lifted the state over here. So this is taken care of. We just need to make sure that the set x is next. We need to make sure this function is called because it was called in here. So we call it on handle play. So we stuck this here, okay? And then the next part is we need to handle the current squares. So we pass current squares down here. So essentially we're just passing everything down here, and then we're updating it up here. So essentially we just pass all these components down here, and then this stuff updates whatever we need, and then it passes it back up. So that's kind of how it works. I need to learn how to draw this in a neater way. If you guys know of any tools or any techniques to better describe these state systems, please let me know, because it's a little bit hard to keep track of actually if you draw it out manually. All right, let's continue on to the tutorial. Okay, so we replaced onPlay with next square. We added onPlay, and then onPlay has next squares. Great. Let's read through it. So replace set squares and set x's next calls in handle click with a single call to onPlay, so we can update the board when the user clicks a square. Okay, makes sense. The board component is fully controlled by the props passed to it by the game component. You need to implement the handle play function in the game component to get the game working again. What should handle play do when called? Remember that board used to call set squares with an updated array. Now it passes updated squares array to onPlay. The handle play function needs to update game state to trigger a re-render, but you don't have a set square function that you can call anymore. Now you're using the history state variable to store this information. You'll want to update history by appending and updating squares array as a new history entry. You also want to toggle x's next, just as board used to do. Right, so these two. I see, so this is their way of appending. I think ChatGPT actually went through and said we could do that. Ah, look at that, look at that. Appends using the spread operator. You can use the spread operator to create a new array by combining the original array with additional elements. All right, cool. So we just use push instead. I think that we should use this. Okay, so, all right, guys. So here's one thing. I think the proper way is to use the spread operator. The reason I think we should use this is because the spread operator creates a new array, and this keeps the array immutable. All right, so we broke a rule over here. Let's go back. So this is a quick catch. We should definitely not do what we did here in updating the array, because we broke one of the main rules. We mutated history. Like we cannot mutate history. History should not be mutated. In React, we should not mutate objects with the same reference. Okay? By doing push, we're mutating history, right? By doing push, we're essentially let me go to my iPad view. Okay. So when we do push, what are we doing? So we have this history list. Okay, blah, 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 blah. This list of history. We did history dot push, and then we gave it next squares. Right here, we did this. This is a big no-no. So don't do this. Why not do this? Because what we did was we went here and we pushed it into this existing array, and then we gave it back to the state machine. So what we've done is mutated the array. Okay, we do not want to mutate the array. What we do want is to create a new history array. So what we're supposed to do is say history, like we make a new one. So we make a copy of it. Let me see if I can make a copy. We copy this guy, paste it, call this new history, or next history, or new history, whatever. And then we can add it to the end, right? Then we can add our own junk to the end. Right? This already had 2 elements. So we want to add our new history here, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to say, hey, what is this reference, right? The reference to this, we want to pass this new reference back to set history. Right, so instead of, okay, so let me make it a little more clear. So set history, right? This is how we update our state history. Instead of passing history back to set history with this new appended elements, this is bad. This is mutated, right? Don't mutate. What you want to do is pass this new reference to set history. This is good. This new history reference, right? So we've made a copy of it, added our new element, and then we passed it to set history. Okay, so that dot 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 operator, dot 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 history, this is the worst color. So this dot 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 history, comma, what is it? Current squares. This thing creates a new array. It doesn't update history. It just copies history, right? This is a copy of history. And then it appends current squares, right? So this whole thing is a new array, and you can pass it in here. It's not updating history. All right, so I'm glad that we looked at the answer, because this still works, right? Like if you go back to our desktop, this still works, right? It doesn't break it, like you saw, right? I refresh the page. The game still works. The only problem is now it's not really done properly, right? And this is why we want to go through these tutorials. We want to do things properly. We don't want to do something and then we'll wonder why our performance is so bad, right? If we didn't understand immutability, we're gonna try to do these React tutorials. We're gonna try to like make our application based off of these like React boilerplate pieces of code, and we're gonna wonder why our application runs so slowly, or why we're crashing all the time. And like technically it looks like it works, but it doesn't. This is why, right? So let's fix it. There's 2 ways we can fix it. So, hey guys, tell me the 2 ways. One way is to do this, right? Like new history dot slice history, and then new history dot push current squares. Okay, and then we can do set his. Oh, guys, all right. There's one more thing that I didn't even do. All right, you see, when I pushed set history, I didn't even use set history. I just literally pushed into history. So this is bad on bad. Like this is terrible. So we should do new history here. Okay. Okay, and I need to spell push properly. And do I know how to spell? Apparently I do not. Okay, push has 1H. What is this thing? Oh, we need to define this. Okay. Slice of history. So we make a slice of it. Okay, let's make this. Let's do that. Okay, so now what? Read only. Okay, my bad. So let's let new history equals a slice of history. My syntax is bad, but you guys get the point of what I'm trying to do. Okay, so there we go. And then can I make this const? I can. All right, so you guys see what I'm trying to do. So let's remove this line. This is bad. Bad. Okay, so what am I trying to do? Right here, I slice history, right? When I slice it, what does slice do? It creates a copy of it, returns a copy of a section of an array. Well, we slice the whole thing. So new history is now a slice of it. This is a new array. We push current squares onto this new array, which is fine because that's not the current state. And then we set the history to this new reference, right? And let's see if it works. Cool, it still works. Great, right? We have a winner. So this works, but this is like a lot of code, right? We don't want to write this. This sucks. Let's make it shorter. So we can do set history and use the expansion. So let's see ChatGPT. Yeah, ChatGPT says use the spread operator. So we create a new array, and we use the spread operator to give the current array, which is history, and then bam, we can add on whatever we want, which is current squares. Look at that, 3 lines in 1. I like it. And does it work? That is the question. Haha, look at that. Works great, right? Works great. So this is the good way. This is the immutable way. Immutable way. Good. Okay. So this is the good immutable way. We don't want the bad immutable way. We want the good one. Okay? Cool. Now what? Okay, here history creates a new array that contains all the items in history followed by next squares. Here you go. You can see that you can read the ... history spread syntax to enumerate all the items in history. For example, if history is null, 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 blah, 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 then new history will be blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. At this point, you've moved the state to live in the code game component, and the UI should be fully working just as before it was before the refactor. Here is the code, the code should look like at this point. Okay. Showing past moves. All right, what next? Since you're recording the tic-tac-toe game's history, you can now display a list of past moves to the player. React elements like button are regular JavaScript objects. You can pass them around in your application. Okay. To render multiple items in React, you can use an array of React elements. Okay, we can use an array of React elements. Great. You already have an array of history moves in state, so now you need to transform it into an array of React elements. In JavaScript, to transform one element into another, you can use the map method. Right? So this is a map method. This is saying an array of 3. You use the map, and you multiply each by 2. It becomes this new thing. You'll use map to transform your history of moves into React elements representing buttons on the screen. And display, oh, hi. Hello, Belram, am I saying your name right? Let me say hi. Hi, Belram. Thank you for joining the stream. Wow, this is so exciting. Hello, hello. Feel free to join our Discord. Let me stick our Discord chat onto, let's see. let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, hey, thank you very much for joining our stream. Yeah, thank you so much for joining our stream. I hope I don't butcher your name. If you join the Discord, you can definitely let me know how you pronounce your name. But yeah, I hope this is good information. We're trying to finish up. Oh, let's see. Do we have a new welcome? Okay, I don't see any. Okay, I thought someone joined the Discord, but no. Okay, yeah. If you have any questions, please let me know. We're gonna try our best to finish the React application. We're so close. Like if you look at it, we're really close to the end. Look at this. Oh, let me move my face. My face is blocking. But if you look down here, we're so close to finishing up. We have like 3 more sections. So let's keep going. So this is the map operation. So we'll use the map to transform my history of moves to buttons representing like buttons on the screen and display the list of buttons to jump to past moves. Let's map over the history in the game component. Okay, so how does it work? They're saying, hey, we're gonna make a method called jump to. Okay, that makes sense. We want to jump to the previous moves. And then we're gonna make a list. So this list, these are all the move. Okay, so a move. Okay, this is a list of all the moves. They're basically mapping the move. They're mapping every square. Okay, so this is every element, and then this is every. This is the move. Okay, so how does this map? Let's ask ChatGPT. When you use an arrow function with map, what are the parameters you get back? Okay, so we have the current value, the index, and the array. Okay, cool. So what we got here is the current value of squares and the index of move. All right. And the index of move. Okay, so this is, oh, so this is the number, the move number. Okay, so this is the, okay, so this is the value, like map value, and then index. Okay, so description. If move is greater than 0, so this is like move number 1 basically, because move number 0 is just an array of nulls. Go to move blah. Okay. Else go to game start. Okay, cool. And then we're gonna return a list of buttons with a description. And then this will jump to, which will do, okay, so that button will do this thing, which is jump to. Okay, so let's try it out ourselves. Oh, all right, guys, I'm getting a little bit tired, to be honest with you. It's been an hour, but I really want to finish this. I really do. We're so close. How much more do we have? We're so close. We're so close. Can we do it? Honestly, I'm getting quite tired. Let's, okay, how about this? How about this? I think I'm gonna need a break, but I want to spread this out into 2 videos. Let's just finish it. Come on, let's stick through it. Let's finish it. All right, guys, we got this. We got this. Let's just do it. We're so close. Let's do it quickly. Let's make our own map method. Okay, where are we? Let's make our own map method. It's definitely been a long week, guys. I have had a long week. I'm doing this on the weekend just because this is important, right? This is important to learn ourselves. We want to learn ourselves. We don't want to get drawn into life and just live life on a wave. We want to continue. We want to make our own history. So let's map the history by, let's not cheat. So we're gonna make a variable called move, all right? These are all the moves that we need to list, right? Okay, how do we make a list of all the moves? We're gonna go through the history, and then we're gonna map it. And how are we gonna map it? We're gonna map it. Okay, so when we do the map function, we use an arrow function again, all right? Okay, so let's take a look. The arrow function is gonna, okay, so moves, I see. So, all right, what is move? When we learn about things, we need to figure out what the variable represents. So moves represents a list of React JSX elements, like JSX components, right? Or JSX elements. So moves is a list of JSX elements. Or sorry, moves is a list, is a actual like list in JavaScript. Like it's a list of buttons, right? No, it's actually a list. Yeah, it's an array of these list elements. Okay, so moves is an array of list elements. So let me just clarify what that is. Let me open up text editor or something. Okay, so what is moves? Let's make this a little bigger. So moves is an array of these guys, right? Okay, it's an array of this one, comma, another one of these in JSX. Okay, so it's one of these. Okay, it's one of these, and then it's another one, and another one. And each of these will have like game step 1, game step 2, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it's a list of all of these. That's what we're making. And it's always important to understand what we're trying to make, right? So moves, I'm gonna return a list of stuff. A list of elements. Or like it's each map operator is gonna return a list component, like a list element. And how are we gonna make that? So okay, so the variable we're gonna get is move, the move number, and then we're also gonna get the squares from that step. All right, and then what are we gonna do? We're gonna say if move, okay, if move is greater than 0, this means that the game has started, else the game has ended. If the game has ended, we want to say go back to, or if the game has not started, go to the start of the game. Okay, so if the game has not started, go to game start. If move is 0, but we're already at game start. Anyway, okay, let's take a look. Oh, I see. Okay, so basically, if where are we right now? If, what am I doing? Okay, sorry. So they made it, we want to give a description. Okay, so this button, okay, so what's in here? A button. Okay. Now the button is gonna have a description. So we're gonna do const description. Okay. We're gonna make the description go to game start. Okay, so move is greater than 0, go to game start. And what is happening here? This is saying I don't know what's going on here, but we'll figure it out in a second. What's this saying? This is saying const declaration must be initialized. Oh, we have to initialize it. Okay, let's just do that. Is that what tic-tac-toe says? Yeah, okay. So we're gonna make the description if its move is greater than 0. Description go to game move number, and then we're gonna add the move. Is that what they want? Yeah, go to game move, go to move number, blah. Okay, that's easy. Okay, so this is gonna show the description. So let's see if at least we have buttons. Oh, we need to display moves. So let's put moves here. Ah, look at that. Okay, so we need it. Wow, look at that. Guys, do you see this? This is pretty cool. This is awesome. I mean, the buttons don't do anything because we definitely have not linked up the buttons, but that's cool. That's very, very cool. So what is this saying? This is saying each list item should have a key, unique key prop. Okay, that's fair. I think the tutorial is gonna add that. Okay, so also it's asking us to do a jump to the next move. That's fair. Let's do that. I think we can do this ourselves, guys. I think, do you guys feel confident? I feel like we might be able to implement this. Function, this is what? Jump to, right? Jump to, and then this is the next move. Okay. And jump to the next move, our button on click is gonna jump to the next move. Okay. It's gonna jump to the move. Okay, move is, okay, yeah. Okay, how do I know that this move is for this button though? Oh, because I see, because it's filled in. So this is like another closure, right? So jump to move. This move is the move in here because we're inside this closure. Okay, that's fair. So this will, but we can't. Okay, so if we do this, it's gonna do an infinite loop. We need an arrow function here, right? Remember, if we just do jump to move, what's gonna happen is onClick is gonna call jump to move. We don't want that. We want, or when we make this JSX is gonna call jump to move to create the onClick method, which is not what we want to do. We want to give the function jump to move with the move number. So we're gonna make this arrow function which allows us to pass the information down. Okay, great. Okay, let's see if it works. I think it still works. Okay, so jump to is not gonna work yet. Let's just make sure it's being called. Console next move. Let's just make sure that it's calling the right thing. Oh, console.log. Okay, 1. Yay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's super cool, actually. 7. Haha! Look at that. That's pretty dang cool. Okay, so now the jump, we just need to update the jump through method, right? So how are we gonna jump to the history? Let's try it ourselves and then see what the tutorial says. So we're gonna slice. Haha. So let's ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT, how are you doing? Can you show us the parameters you can pass to slice? Haha, look at that. I am a language AI model, so I don't have feelings, but I'm here and ready to assist you. Okay, thanks, ChatGPT. Regarding the slice method, you can pass 1 or 2 arguments, start and end. All right, start, we already know. End is optional. So slice is required, but we've never passed it on. Anyway, I think this is a case where it's wrong, right? We've never used start. And it says extract elements from index 1, 2, 3, not including 3. Okay, so to verify, let's use ChatGPT properly. Can you find us documentation for the slice function in JavaScript? Ha, look at that. I love it. This is how I like to use ChatGPT. I like to use it to find the documentation and read the documentation because I have trust issues. Okay, so end is not included. All right, so when we do the history, when we go to the move, what do we want? When we go, let's see the behavior. So when we want to go to move 1, so when we go to game start, it's going to index 0. When we go to move 1, it's index 1. So we need to add 1. Is that what I'm seeing? So we'll do set history dot slice next move plus 1. Is that what I'm seeing? I don't know. Let's try it. Okay. Okay. That does not do what we wanted to do. Oh, I'm sorry. We slice it. We do set history. Oh, no, we did do set history. Interesting. So what are we doing wrong here? We said jump to. Let's just slice this. Just give me nothing. Let's see if this works at least. So what should happen is anytime we press a button, it removes everything, which it does not. Okay. Okay, that is not what we want. Okay, let's take a look at the tutorial. We're a little bit stuck. Okay, so we got what we wanted here. This is what our code should look like. It's gonna ask for a unique key. That's what we'll do. Great. As we iterate through history array inside the function, you pass the map. The squares argument goes through each element of history, and the move argument goes through each array index. Okay, as we iterate through the history array, okay, the move argument goes through each index, right? In most cases, you need the actual array elements, but to render a list of moves, you only need the indexes. For each move in the tic-tac-toe game's history, you create a list item. All right, that's what we did. And then we need a jump to. Okay. For now, you should see a list of moves. Picking a key. When you render a list, React stores some of the information about each rendered list item. When you update a list, React needs to determine what has changed. you could have add, removed, rearranged, or updated list items. Imagining transitioning from these two to these three. In addition to updated counts, a human reading this would probably say you swapped Alexa and Ben's ordering and inserted Claudia between Alexa and Ben. However, React is a computer program and can't know what you intended, so you need to specify a key property for each list item to differentiate each list item from its siblings. If your data is from a database ID could be used as keys. Okay, so anytime you have a list item, you need to give it a key. Okay, it's the ID. When the list is re-rendered, When a list is re-rendered, oh, I see. React takes each list item's key and searches the previous list items for a matching key. If the current list, okay, so when it's re-rendered, React takes each list item's key and searches the previous list items for a matching key. If the current list item has a key that didn't exist before, React creates a component. Okay. If the current list is missing a key that existed in the previous list, React destroys the previous component. If two keys match, the corresponding component is moved. Keys tell React about the identity of each component, which allows React to maintain state between re-renders. If a component key changes, the component will be destroyed and recreated within the new state. All right. Key is a special and reserved property in React. When an element is created, React extracts the key property and stores the key directly on the returned element. Okay. When key is a special property, when an element is created, React extracts the key property, stores the key directly on the returned element. Even though the key may look like it's passed as props, React automatically uses key to decide which components to update. There's no way for a component to ask what key its parent specified. Okay, so key is not a prop, it's something that React uses to keep track of list components. It's strongly recommended that you assign proper keys whenever building dynamic lists. If you don't have an appropriate key, you may want to consider restructuring your data so that you do. If no key is specified, React will report an error and use the array index as a key by default. Using the array index as a key is problematic when trying to reorder a list items or inserting or removing items. Explicitly passing key silences the error but has the same problems as array indices and is not recommended in most cases. All right. Why? Because I see. It's a problem because when you rearrange the array, the item does not contain. Oh, I see. When you rearrange, okay, so let's take a look at this real quick. It's for quick understanding. So what this is saying is lists like Alex, Bob, Jane, Tommy, I don't know, Barb. Okay, so these guys are in a list, right? If it's in a list, it can go 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so we're saying that React is saying these need to all have a unique ID over here. Okay, let's say that this is a list, right? This is a list, and the list index is the name. The problem is if we rearrange the list, let's say Bob, Alex, Tommy, Jane, Barb. Okay, so we've rearranged the items in the list, but the index of the list is still the same. So now Bob, who used to be 1, is now 0, right? That's not the same. These are different. Right? These are not the same. Right? Alex is now 0, now is 1. Jane was 2, now she's 3. So when React sees this, it's going to get confused because now Jane, which React thought was index of 2, is now Tommy. So React's going to get super confused. So by default, if you don't specify a key and you give it a list, it's going to use the list items. But when you start rearranging stuff, React's going to freak out. And these don't need to be globally unique. They just need to be unique to the components and their siblings. That makes sense. So implementing time travel. In tic-tac-toe's game history, each past move has a unique ID associated with it. It's a sequential number of the move. Moves will never be reordered, deleted, or inserted in the middle, so it's safe to use move index as a key. In the game function, you can add keys to the list. You can add key as li key equals move. If you reload the rendered game, the key error should disappear. Okay, this is great. This is great learning. So we learned about how keys work and why we need keys. I actually always wondered why we need keys, and this definitely explains why. So we're gonna add key here. Key is gonna be the move, and done. And since our move is never gonna shuffle order, it's unique. All right, let's refresh. Bam, error gone, which is great. Okay, we're so close, so close. Before we can implement jump to, you need the game component to keep track of which step the user is currently viewing. To do this, define a new state variable called current move, defaulting to 0. Okay. Why do we need to keep track of what we're seeing? Okay, let's take a look at this. So we're rendering all this stuff, but current squares is from, oh, I see. So you see why it didn't work? Well, but we changed, we literally removed the history, right? We changed the history, right? We sliced the history and then we set it. So shouldn't history, well, first of all, yeah, we sliced it. Okay. Why can't we just slice the history? Okay, that's what we did. Okay. So, what's different between this one, right? Okay, so we're saying that they're saying that to update the jump to method, we need to create a new state variable called current move, and that's 0. We're gonna update the jump to, so we're gonna say the current move is the next move. All right, that's fair. Now you'll make 2 game changes to the handle play function. If you go back in time and make a new move from that point, you only want to keep the history up to that point. So you want to slice it. After each move is made, you need to update current move to the last point in the history index. Finally, you will modify the game component to render the currently selected move. Okay. Instead of always rendering the final move. Okay. How is that different than just shortening the history? We should be able to just shorten the history and not keep track of. I understand the mod part. Okay, so you go back in time, you need to figure out what the set X is next. Right, that part I understand. But when we jump to here, can't we just slice this? Right? Yeah, see, you can slice this. Current move. Okay, so why, when we slice it to the current move, what's happening? You slice it to the current move. The history will... Okay. Let's slice it to... I'm really curious why our implementation didn't work. History... So it's next move plus 1, right? And the next move is, let's say here, right? So 2. The next move would be 2. So this is 0 to 2. And then we're setting the history to this. Okay. I mean, and we set the history to that. Why is the game not rendered? It should render it, right? Because history is now changed. So current square should update, right? Oh, I see. Current squares may not update because I guess current squares is never updated because, but current squares depends on history, and we've updated history using set history, right? Oh, it does work. Hey, look at that, guys. Okay, so I don't know why it didn't work before, but it works now. Look at that. So I think the only problem with our implementation is actually that the X's and O's are, okay, so at move 2, yeah, so we didn't fix the X's and O's. So our method kind of works, right? I think it's not as neat as they like it, but our method also works. Okay, I'm less confused now. All right, we can move on. So let's do it their way, because I think theirs is a little neater, right? It makes more sense. So basically they're saying, let's keep track of the current move. Let's make a state machine for the current move. So I was really adamant on trying to figure out why it doesn't work, because if what we didn't work, then it means our understanding of React was incorrect, right? Whether or not the way that we're doing it is the proper way of doing it, I think we should test our understanding. And because it wasn't working, it seemed like our understanding was off, but it does work the way we want it, so we can do it their way. Okay, so they're gonna do current move is, they're gonna do a new state called current move. So let's set a new state called current move. Set current move. And then the current move is what? 0. Okay, so it starts off with 0 as the current move, which makes sense. Okay, and then the jump to, we're gonna say, hey, the current move is gonna be the next move, right? Gonna be the next move. So we don't need to slice up the history like we did. That's fine. Okay. And then we're gonna say X's next is mod 2 of the next move. That kind of makes sense, because if you start off with X, then every other move it becomes X. So you need to basically figure out if it's X or O, right? So this will give you if it's X or O. So X is every other move, every odd move basically, or every even move. Okay, so this is explaining that we need, okay. So what are we doing? So we're saying set x is next to next move mod 2 is it even? That's a question. Cool. And why is it triple zeros? I guess it's a value comparison, not a reference. All right, cool. Now we'll change the game's handle play function when we click on the square. So we're gonna change next history to this. Okay, that's fair. So when we go back in time, it's gonna change the next history to this. That makes sense. And then we're also going to set the current move to the last element in the array. Okay, that makes sense. So next move, where are we? Handle play, set history is gonna be the next history. Okay, let's just do it in here. Slice 0, and then this is next current move plus 1. Right? Yep. And the next squares. How come ours is current squares? I guess we called it current squares. Okay. I guess our handle play we called next squares. I think we called it current squares. Let's see, they called it, yeah, they called it next squares. So we called it current squares. All right, that's okay. And then we're gonna set the history, which we did it in line. And what? Set the current move to the last move in the array. That's right. We want to do that. So now we're gonna set current move to the history length -1. Cool. And then it says we should be able to use it. Okay, let's try it. Refresh. Bam, bam, bam. Oh, current move is not a function. Why is it not a function? Because you need to do set current move. We have to use the setter. Bam, 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 bam. Does not work. We have made a mistake somewhere. Okay, so you can see that the modulus works, but everything else does not. Why? So set history, we're slicing from 0 to current move. Set the current move. Oh, I see. Current squares is oh, I see. So we're always rendering the last bit, but we want it to render just the current move. Okay, let's try again. Okay, now we have an issue that it is. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're modulusing the wrong thing. This should be modulusing the current move. Okay, let's try that. Okay, that's not what we need to do. All right, guys, I'm getting a little bit tired, but we gotta push through. So what's happening? So we are setting the next history, so next squares. so let's see what's happening. When we press the first one, this is not updated. Why is it not updated? So let's take a look at our React Dev Tools. When we click the board, we go to current move. Okay, so current move is, I think this is the problem. We're just doing history dot -1, but it's not the next history. We need the next history. Oh, I see the issue. So basically we are, okay, so this is why we need to pull this out. So this is the next history. And then we can set the next state here. And then now the last move that we want to display is actually the next history's last element. I think this will fix the problem. Okay, so this is better. There we go, look at that. Haha. Oh, that's pretty cool. We can move forward and backwards. And then it overrides it. Wow, this is pretty cool. All right, guys, so this is much better. This is much better. Okay, so let's say we're here. We're about to tie. We don't want to tie. Let's go back to move 4. And bam. There we go. We won. Awesome. So that's great. So where are we? If you click on any step, the board should immediately show what we did. Okay, cool. Final cleanup. We're at the end, guys. We almost made it. This has been almost a 2-hour stream. No wonder I'm so tired. All right, we're almost there, guys. If we look at the code closely, we may notice that x and x is equal to true when current move is even, and x and x is false when the current move is odd. In other words, if you know the value of the current move, then you can always figure out what x and x should be. Okay. There's no reason for us to store both of these states. In fact, you should always try to avoid redundant states. Simplifying what you store in state reduces bugs and makes your code easier to understand. Change game so that it doesn't store x is next as a separate state. Instead, it figures it out based off of the current move. Okay, can we do this ourselves? All right, well, it tells us how to do it, but let's take a look at what it's saying anyway. X is next is current move mod 2. Okay, so let's do that. X is next. We don't need the state it's saying. Yeah, we don't need the state. What we need is x is next is equal to, was it the current move mod 2 0. Cool. Oh, don't know why I deleted that. Triple equals 0. And then we don't need is x is next anymore. Bam. And does our game work? Haha, look at that. Still works great. Wow, this is really cool. This is awesome. All right, guys. This is excellent. So we've gotten through a lot of this tutorial, like 99% of it. We're almost there. Hang in there. This is a long stream. We're almost there. No chance. Okay, so no, you no longer need x is next state declaration or calls to set x is next. Now there's no chance for x is next to get out of sync with your current move, even if you make a mistake while coding components. All right, so this is pretty important. We never want to duplicate state. So if there are elements that are dependent on other element, like if there's some state that depends on another state, you don't want to make 2 states and then have the states have a chance to like get out of sync, right? You want to make sure you only have one state and you derive that other like derived state from that original state. That way, once you change that one state, everything reflects. You don't have to keep track of both, because if you keep track of both, they'll go out of sync and you'll definitely not have a fun time. Okay, this is the part we've been waiting for. Congratulations, you've created a tic-tac-toe game that lets you play tic-tac-toe, indicates when the player has won the game, stores the game's history as the game progresses, allows players to review a game's history and see previous versions of the game's board. Nice work. We hope you now feel like you have a decent grasp of how React works. Here are the final results. If you have extra time or want to practice your React skills, here are some ideas for improvements that you could make to the tic-tac-toe game, listed in order of increasing difficulty. For the current move only, show your move at number instead of a button. Okay. Rewrite board to use 2 loops to make squares instead of hard coding them. All right. Add a toggle button to let you sort the moves in either ascending or descending order. When someone wins, highlight the 3 squares that caused the win. When no one wins, display a message about the results being a draw. So we did that, actually. We did the draw part. Display the location for each move in the format, blah, in the move history list. Okay. Oh, okay. Throughout this tutorial, you've touched on React components, including elements, components, props, state. Now you've seen how these components work together when building a game. Check out Thinking in React to see how React concepts work when building an app's UI. Wow, look at that. So we finished the tutorial. And now we can start looking at how all this stuff works in the UI. All right. Where are we? So, thank you guys for sticking around for 2 hours today. This is much, much longer than our usual stream. I really, really, really wanted to finish our tic-tac-toe tutorial because we've been stuck on it for like a week now, and we definitely needed to make more progress. I think that there is one part that's missing. That's React routers. I don't know why the tutorial didn't go through React routers. I think routing allows us to like have different pages on our application, and I'm very curious. So before we leave, let's ask ChatGPT what we need to do. ChatGPT, how are you? We finally finish the tic-tac-toe tutorial you suggested. We want to continue our application. For some reason, the tutorial didn't go over React routes. Do we need to know that? Also, can you reiterate and update our tutorial schedule so we can be on track to making our application? This is the career discovery web app that we discussed when we first started talking. Great. Regarding React Router, it's an essential library in React for handling navigation. Okay. As for the updated schedule, okay, so regarding React Router, it's an essential library in React for handling navigation and creating single-page application with multiple views. If your web application will have multiple pages, then React Router is definitely worth learning. It allows you to define routes for different components and handle navigation seamlessly within your React app. As for the updated tutorial schedule, this is the updated schedule. So day 1, setup, blah, blah, blah. Day 2, React state management. Okay, familiarize yourself with React components, create a simple React component and render on screen. Learn about React state management. Okay, that's what we've done. Implement state changes, event handling, create interactive elements. We've done that. Styling, inline CSS, React router and navigation. Learn about React router. Okay. Implement the mind map component. Create the mind map component that displays different interests as nodes. Implement the zoom. Okay, this is great. Awesome. Awesome. thank you for the update. We will check out React Router before we move on. Sounds like a great plan. Do you have the best resource for us to learn about React Router? Okay, so there's a quick start guide. Let's take a look. Okay, the kickstart. Okay, well, apparently the kickstart guide is not good, but there is a router tutorial. How long is this? So button. Okay, so there is quite a lot of information here. 30 minutes to 60 minutes if you're following along. Okay. Is React Router, is this website the most way to learn? So I'm trying to figure out, so this part is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to use ChatGPT to find us good resources to learn React Router. I don't know what the best website is, but this is the official documentation. Does reactjs.com. Okay, so React itself is all the things that we've learned already. React Router is a little bit different. It's just a library. All right. So thank you, ChatGPT. So let's go back to our architecture, and we need to learn one more thing. All right. So one last thing. Bear with me. Let's add React Router here. So we did learn React.js. So I'm really happy that we've learned React.js. But we also, in order to make a web application, we really do need to learn React Router. So I'm gonna call us the React. I'm gonna say React.js. We've gotten most of it done. React Router. What other things do we need? Another question. Is React Router the only other library we need for this web app? Okay. Okay, so it basically says we have other state management stuff. Redux. Okay, so we'll figure that out later. Actually, let's see. Use Redux in React. I see. If your React app has complex so Redux is another popular library for handling states. If we're small and medium size, we can use the built-in use state. All right, so let's stick with the built-in use state for now. This has been a really long stream. Thank you guys so much. Let me switch cameras. Yeah, this has been a really long stream. Thank you guys so much for joining us. My throat's getting a little tired. But I'm so happy that we've accomplished what we did today. It's a huge accomplishment. This is our first tutorial guided by ChatGPT. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I hope you come back tomorrow. We're gonna look through React Router and try to make a full-fledged web interface with React Router. That way somebody can navigate through the website instead of just a static page. After we do that, I think we're well on our way for our first graphical interface for our application, and it's super exciting. Started tomorrow, we're gonna sit down and take a look a little bit at the architecture, just to make sure that we're not missing anything, and we'll continue on from there. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining YouTube Live. This has been a really long stream. It's our first time on YouTube Live. I'm super excited. I hope this platform is good for streaming. I'm curious how much better this is compared to Twitch. So we will see. But I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you later.